The race continues and stocks keep moving. Some days higher, some days lower. This is quite a volatile industry. This week, though, we're going to take a different spin on this industry. Now, many doctors and hospitals don't want to have a personal meeting with you during the pandemic. What stock could be a great investment during this time? Let's take a look. Now, our next story is in the coronavirus space. We always talk about coronavirus because it's a hot topic. Now, just think about this. It's been a record year in the world science of telemedicine. Why is telemedicine so important? Well, I'm a vet. My VA keeps canceling my appointments to set up video appointments. They don't want me to come my doctor don't want to see me. They don't want to see me. All right, and if you call in and you say, well, doc, I want to see if I need to be tested. Doc said, well, stay home if you feel like you got it in quarantine. Doc doesn't want you to come in to even take the test if you don't have to. Telemedicine is huge, and I'm not sure how many of you realize that it is as big as it is, and that's why it's part of my coronavirus. I'm doing a little spin on coronavirus this week. Instead of concentrating on all of this stocks looking for a vaccine, I think telemedicine needs to be talked about. All right, and no company dominates the U.S. corner of this market more than Teladoc. That's the company that we're looking at for our coronavirus stock today. The company is the oldest telehealth provider in the country. I don't know how many of you knew that, but if you didn't know that, now you know. If you don't know, now you know. With the demand for telehealth services higher than ever, all right, higher than ever because of the coronavirus pandemic, it's no surprise that Teladoc's star power has exploded since the beginning of the year. All right, so that's the first stock that we're going to look at in this space. The next one happens to be a company called Fulgent. They're up 10% on COVID-19 testing deal for New York schools. New York has been a hotbed, along with Florida, for COVID cases. Flugen shares spiked nearly 10% in after-hour session on Wednesdays as the company said it would supply COVID-19 testing to hundreds of thousands, not to hundreds, not to thousands, but hundreds of thousands of students in partnership with New York City Health and hospitals at nearly 1,600 locations. That's huge. A lot of people are sending their kids back to school. You want to make sure that you're sending your kid back to school and that they're safe, and they're putting the testing out there. So a company has got a contract, a deal with New York City schools, again, in the hotbed of COVID cases. That's big news. That could affect the stock in a way that could be positive. So what I'm going to do is look at these two stocks, and I want to get Susan's take on them. The two stocks are Fulgent and Teladoc. All right, yep. So let's look at these real quick. Now, before I go to look at them, is there anything you know about these stocks that you want to put into play before I go analyze them?
Well, I'm just going to mention that it's just interesting that you mentioned telemedicine, because yes, it's everywhere now, and I do think that it's something that a lot of people would have shied away from before because they would have been worried about it wouldn't be as good and so on. So in a piece actually recently by McKinsey, they wrote about, and I just have the article up here in front of me, which is that telemedicine experienced a 10-fold growth in subscribers in how long, Glenn? 15 days. 15 days. Wow. So the growth of this area is absolutely massive, and also I think that a lot of it is here to stay, because if you're not well, aside from the contagious nature of COVID, if you're not well, you may not necessarily want to go and to sit among other people who aren't unwell. This area I think is here to stay. So I'm interested to see what your stock analysis is going to bring up here. I definitely think this is an area to watch. Excellent. Before I answer the question, Kashif says, Glenn, if there was one technical indicator on the VectorVest software which captures the news sentiment, which indicator would that be? Don't know. If I find it, I'm going to sell it for $200 trillion billion if I have an indicator that can give me the news sentiment. I don't think that there's any indicator personally. I don't think that there's any any technical indicator that is capable of doing that. So there you go. All right, so now let's look at Fulgent. The stock's price is at $33.16. The value is at $33.12.
our goal is to have you in safe, undervalued stocks. We're going to call this stock fairly valued. Upside potential, relative value, the stock's long-term price appreciation potential as compared to an alternative investment in AAA corporate bond. That's a lot to say. Upside potential on this stock, should you hold it compared to a AAA corporate bond? It's above 1, it's favorable. Relative safety, below 1. So it tells me that Fulgent is a little bit more of a riskier stock, but it's got good upside potential. This is more of an aggressive play in and of itself with RV above 1, RS below 1. Relative timing tells me if the stock is in an uptrend or not. Well, it's above the value of 1. That tells me that the stock's in an uptrend. Not in a gangbuster uptrend, but in an uptrend nonetheless. In this list of VST, it's got a combination of value, safety, and timing above 1. The stock is resilient to big pullbacks. All right, so at 1.49, the comfort index shows me the stock's ability to withstand long or lengthy price declines. This is what catches my attention. The stock grows its earnings of $1.10 by 43% a year. This stock makes money and it grows its money. Remember, this, and you saw in the article, it's one of the longest, if not the longest running stock in this space. So I love the analysis. I do feel that if you take it, it's a little bit more of an aggressive move with relative safety below 1, relative value above 1, but beautiful from a fundamental side, growing their earnings at a clip of 43% a year. Now, let's talk about Teladoc, trading at $203 and a value of $18. Stock is way overvalued. Now, could this Teladoc be a news-driven play? Well, let's take a look at that, right? It's down today. It's down actually about $19 today for a loss of about 8.75%. Upside potential, not there. So this is not a stock that I really want to hold long-term. Safety, not there. The stock has got a little bit more risk associated. Relative timing, stock is not in an uptrend yet. The VST, the combination of value, safety, and timing is below the value of 1. CI, though, the stock is not susceptible to long and lengthy price declines. It's resilient enough. Earnings, negative earnings at less than $1, and they grow their earnings at a clip of 4% a year. So this could really be a news-driven story. I'm going to highlight, they're both highlighted. I'm going to look at the graphs on these. So Fulgent, all right, Fulgent's
I'm interested here, Glenn, to see that that's a really high CI. That's a really high CI.
For a stock that's got bad everything. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. As a matter of fact, let's go to that stock first. I'm not sure why the CI is as high as it is. Oh, maybe that's why. The stock does tend that when it does pull back, it doesn't pull back for long turns. It may pull back sharply, but it does rebound. It pulls back, it rebounds. It pulls back, it rebounds. And the rebounds are strong. For the most part, over and over and over again, I think that that's what's driving the CI high, number one. Number two, on a one-year graph, the stock is definitely moving from the bottom left to the top right. It does have some volatility involved in it. RT, for the most part, too, stays above the value of 1. The stock still shows that even in these sideways moves, that it's got more, it's more so in an uptrend than not. History is showing that the stock just moves and moves and moves. And right now, the stock is trading in a channel. Going to put this back on a 3-month graph. The stock, excuse me, the stock is trading in a channel. Even with the news, it's not enough to pull the stock up yet. It's not enough. And if I'm going to think about getting into it based on the news, I'd like to see the stock take out either this level of resistance at 235.80 or take out that high, one of the two. Because, or from a trade perspective, knowing that relative safety is below 1, I can play the bounces and retraces off of support and resistance. This could be more of a trade stock, but you would think that with the news, it should bolster the stock's price and push it higher. Just not happening. RT with today's action is now below 1, and the volume is starting to pick up a little bit. Even we're getting a lot more sellers of the stock. Susan, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, as I'm looking at this to me looks like a really interesting put spread. Trading in a channel, it's got the volatility. The only thing that concerns me, well, sorry, there's two things that concerns me. One is that the RT has gone below 1. I'd wait for that to turn around. And then the second thing is that I would be just a little bit, well, not a little bit, I'd be concerned a lot about that valuation. I mean, it's, as you mentioned, hugely overvalued. So I would be putting in a put spread as opposed to just a naked put option. But that's an interesting one. As I say, it's an area that I think is going to grow and grow. Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering why the company is losing money. I'm wondering, is it because it's investing in a lot of infrastructure? I mean, you can't just switch on Zoom. And I know obviously what's going on with Zoom today, but you can't just switch on Zoom, open your mouth and say what's wrong with me. But I would be interested this looks like a really interesting one. As I say, got the volatility, got the channel. Just like you said, Glenn, it moves forward, pulls back, moves forward, pulls back. So this, as I'm watching it now, I'm thinking about, what could I do with an option here?
You know something? I think the spread is way too big to put a condor on. This is more of, if you got to pick a direction though, whether you're going to be bullish or bearish on what spread you're going to put on. And if I'm going to be bearish, at least I do have a level of support right here. That I could probably put on the spread, or it all depends on how big of a spread you want to put. $10, $5, probably $10 spread, 220, 200. That'd be tough unless I know it's a big hit to the stock. Even if I took the 200 strike, if the market starts to go down and the stock continues, it's going to blow through that strike quick. But I think that's. I'd like to put it at the money or close to at the money to give it some room, or a little bit out of the money to give it some room. But this is tough. I think that long term this may have some upside. My relative value is not telling me that yet, but it makes sense that telemedicine is going to take off. This is something to at least definitely keep your eye on, if nothing else. All right, so it made the news, but I'm going to wait on trying to buy that. Here's the Fulgent. The Flugen did take a big pop off of the news. The problem is the stock's price closed yesterday. Prior to the news, the stock's price closed at $228.83. It hit a high today of $35. You know what's happening? That's called profit taking. Coming off the stock, getting smoked a little bit here. If you held it, that was a good pop. You didn't replace all of the loss here, but you might have said, man, I'll take that off the table. There's a lot of sellers. Now, it's a green bar at the bottom because there were a lot of buyers coming in, but look at the big wick at the top of the candle. A lot of sellers are pushing it down. It's still open candle, but that's a lot of selling pressure on that candle. Anything you want to add, Susan?
Not really. I think you have it there. I mean, as you say, that like the doji the day before, 2 days before that as well. I mean, it does have all the hallmark there of certainly of profit taking. I mean, I'm looking there at your volume at the bottom. There was, a lot of people involved in making that happen. It seems to be that the buyers there are trying to win the battle. And I mean, the RT is just sneaking just above 1. I think you have it there in 1, Glenn. It's 1. I'd be probably, a little bit conscious of I think you're absolutely right, the back to school and so on like that. So I mean, you would wonder whether it's had its big news out there. On the other hand, I mean, the other thing is that if you can take a test at home, then of course you're not going to be surrounded by other people. Again, I know I'm going back to the same point, but it really matters when you're dealing with a particularly contagious disease. There's a lot of people out there who are getting tested who don't have the symptoms, who aren't testing positive. So therefore, if you can do the test at home and you are testing negative, then you have a lower risk of contracting the symptoms from those around you who have a greater likelihood of being positive. So, I mean, there is a lot to be said for this. But again, I suppose I'm a bit like I was with the last stock. I wouldn't be taking action today. I'd want to see a little bit more happening. And a few people are asking that, they're asking that on the chat. What would you buy today, or what would you do today? I think one of the most important things that I personally find myself saying a lot when I'm speaking to subscribers is you don't have to take action every day. In fact, not taking action is an action. And certainly today, so far, Glenn, I would, on both of those stocks, I'd be waiting to see what would pan out yet.
All right. So that's our story on the coronavirus. A little different of a spin than we normally do. So I wanted to cover that. I think TDOC, someone says in the room, Livongo might be a better option than Teladoc space. that's something we can take a look at, Daryl, when we do our quick fire stocks this afternoon. We'll take a look at that. All right, let's get into the next story. Before we do, if you like what you're seeing here, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. I still see a lot more non-subscribers to the channel viewing these videos than subscribers. Let's change that. If you really like the content, please subscribe to the channel. Help us to grow the channel. If you like what's being said by me and Susan both, please share your likes. Hit the like button. Let my VectorVest Nation show Susan some love and making sure that we hit that like button today, because I think she brings a lot to the table.
Yeah.